Alright, so I thought I would make a second We Were State video. The first one seemed to be taken pretty well. I actually got quite a few hits on that. That was kind of cool. I'm going to tell a few more stories. They might not be as funny because I really did put the best stories first. I'll tell you a few more stories because they were interesting. I had a fun time teaching billiards. I loved it. But I had some instances that were kind of frustrating, and I'm going to tell you about a couple of them. This one's kind of a mix of frustration and funny things. So let's start off with a pretty big one. Now, in my class, one of the things that I did was I would offer to let people write papers to make up days that they had missed if there was a good reason, over and above what they could normally make up, which I would allow. I think it was 2 makeup days, just at any time, and I would give you certain things to do to make up days. But this girl in my class, she missed quite a bit of time, and while it wasn't a school-sanctioned thing, it was a legitimate reason. And so I told her, okay, if you want to make up those days, what I want you to do is I want you to write me a paper on, I believe it was Pride and Prejudice, which, in my opinion, is one of the greatest books ever written. She wrote a paper. I got the paper. I looked at it. I read it. One thing that, being an English major, also journalism, technical writing, I did all that. You can tell when somebody writes something if it's them or not, because people write the way that they are. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. So she wrote this paper. I looked at it. I read it. It was a good paper, but it wasn't her. And I knew it. I was just like, this cannot be her. The way she talks, the way that she expresses herself, none of that was in the paper. And so what I did was I looked the paper up online. I just typed in a line from her paper on the internet, and I did a search. And it turned up a place where you could buy papers, and it had that line expressly in it. And I was taken back. I was a little bit frustrated because she was a journalism major. And so not only does it go against the school's rules, but as a journalist, you take that stuff very seriously. Plagiarism is a big deal. That can cost you your career. And so I had to think of how I was going to handle that. And so she had a class right before my class. And so while I was waiting for my class to start, she would come out of her class. And so I decided I'm going to talk to her after her class. And so she came out, and I stopped her, and she's like, "Hey, John, how's it going?" And I'm like, "Good, but I need to talk to you about your paper." I said, "You and I both know that that was not your paper." I said, "So I have 2 options. I can report you to the dean. I can report you for plagiarizing a paper," which we all know what the consequences of that would be. Or I could just fail you for the class. So I'm going to let you decide. And she just got this look on her face like, oh crap, I've been caught. And she just said, fail me. So I ended up actually giving her a D. I probably should have just failed her. Actually, since she was going into journalism, I should have reported her. If I could go back and do it over, I would have actually reported her. Just because there are so few people in that world now that have any integrity at all, that, if I could go back, I might change it a little bit. So she got lucky. So that was a story of, that it was hard. It hurt to have to tell her that, and I felt betrayed not only as an English technical writer. I felt betrayed in that we had that commonality, with our majors. I was in the master's program, she was still getting her bachelor's, but we had that in common, and there was a betrayal there, and I should have held her to a much higher standard, but that's okay. Another story. So during my class, what I would do is I would tell them, okay, we have our test. Okay, see, I've realized that my class was probably the least important class at Weber State. Probably the least important. But so many people used it to get their sixth credit, to get to that part-time status or full-time status. So people would use it for their sixth or 12th credit. And so probably half the class was in that boat. They just needed it for the full-time status or the half-time status. And so I really went easy on my classes. I did not hold them quite to as high of a standard as the academic classes. It was a PE class. So I offered ways to make up days, ways to soften the blow of the test that you take. Because I had a test, and my tests were very easy. If you listened in class, you would ace the test. Just that simple. If you just learned the rules of 9-ball, 8-ball, and just listened a little bit, you would ace the test. But what I did was I offered them to make the test worth a little less towards their grade, that the bottom 5 people, score-wise, would be responsible for bringing to class donuts. Everybody agreed to it. I said, this has to be unanimous. Do you all agree to this? And everybody agreed. So we were good. So we took the test. I found out who the bottom 5 people were, and I let them know, well, you've got to pitch in to bring donuts for the class. I had this one guy that just looked at me, and there are some people that you just wonder how and why they are in school, because they don't care, they don't try, they have attitudes. It's just, why are they there? And this was a guy that fits that category. But when I told him he was on the donut committee, he looked at me and he said, I don't have to bring donuts. I'll report you to the dean. If you try to make me do this, I'll report you to the dean. And, everybody was kind of like looking at him like, whoa, where'd this come from? And so I just smiled and I just said, okay, that is fine. You do not have to help with donuts. What I'm going to do is your grade will be determined by what your test score was. He ended up with about a 40% on the test score. And he quickly changed his tune. He quickly said, no, it's okay. I'll chip in for donuts. And I just had to laugh. Everybody around him was laughing at him because for some reason he wanted to oppose the very thing that was going to help him get a good grade in the class. His attendance was fine, but the test did count for a large portion of the grade, and it would have brought him down to probably a C, maybe a D. And so that was interesting. There are just a few instances like this that you're baffled by the attitude. You're baffled that in such an easy class they would pull these kind of actions. And it's sad because I don't know how their scholastic career went. I don't know if they graduated. If I had to guess, I would say no. But I don't know. I didn't follow them. So back to a little bit more humorous thing. There was a couple guys in my class, and they were great. I loved them. They turned into friends in the class. Friends to me, friends to themselves, friends to the entire class. They were just good guys. But they decided they were going to sing in rock band. And they were so bad. And I have this recorded, but I can't put the video on here because I told them I never would, and try to be a man of my word. They were so bad that people could not tell what song they were singing. They were singing The Land Down Under, Men at Work, I believe. They were singing that so bad that it had everybody laughing, everybody looking, and just questioning reality. It was horrible, but they loved it. They sang loud and proud, and it was fantastic. I loved it. Another great story, I'm sure a lot of you that will be watching this remember Rick. We all loved Rick. He was one of my best friends that I've ever had, and he was teaching a class as well. He was normally a bowler, but we needed another billiards teacher, and so he stepped in and taught a billiards class. Well, of course, he had the health problems, and so he called me up and said, "Hey, John, can you take over my class for a couple weeks?" So I went and took care of his class, and while I was there, I pulled the class together and I said, "Okay, look, I'm going to do a trick shot. If I make this shot, first try, when Rick comes back, you have to tell him that you guys regret taking his class and not taking my class." And they all agreed, and I lined up the trick shot and I nailed it first try. And so when Rick came back, they all at the same time were just kind of like, "Hey, Rick," and he's like, "Yeah, what's up?" And a couple of them were together, and then others were nodding in agreement. They're like, John really showed us the way, and we kind of regret taking your class. We should have taken his because he's the best teacher. And Rick loved that. He died laughing on that because, it didn't last very long. And then they told him, he told us to say that. And it was hilarious, though, because at first he was like, "Well, what's up, guys?" And they told him that, and immediately he knew. And he just started laughing. It was pretty awesome. And I was able to hit the trick shot first try, so that was good, too. Another cool thing that happened was I had 4 members of the orchestra in my class. They took it together, and they kind of formed a little group themselves. And they had to go off on a trip, again, not school sanctioned, it's just a trip for them. And they're like, "John, what can we do to make this up? Because, we need our grades, and we have this trip." And I'm all for, I'm a sucker for music. And so I told them, "If you'll perform for the class, so pick a day, and your job during that hour is to play for the class." And they were like, "Done." And so they brought their instruments, played for the class. One of them sang for the class. It was actually really cool. And it was just a way for me to provide entertainment for the class, for them to keep their grade up in the class, and to allow them to do what they want to do, which I think is more important than billiards. But I know it was a billiards class. But I gave them that opportunity. They took it, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. They sang, what did they sing? The one that I loved the most? Queen. Bohemian Rhapsody. They sang that. And they did a fantastic job, and they actually played their instruments and sang. It was fantastic. So, then the last story, and this is the last one I'll bore you with. The last story is about a kid that took my class, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. But as with a lot of brilliant people, they're a little weird, still a little bit weird. And he did not want to take pool. He did not want to play pool. He did not want to listen to me. He did not want to talk to his classmates. He wanted to play the piano. That is all he wanted to do. And I could tell that he was definitely different. He did not have that he did not have the social abilities that everybody else had, and it was going to be hard for him. It was going to be difficult for him to be social, to work within groups. And so I told him, this was when the Union Building was being rebuilt, and so we were at the bottom level of a dorm, and we had all the tables put up in their rec room. There was a piano in there. And I asked him, oh, would you rather play the piano for the class? And he immediately lit up. His demeanor changed completely, and he was an amazing player. And he sat down at that piano and made that sing for the class. And every day he would come and do a minimal amount of pool, because I'd say, you gotta participate, but if you just participate a little bit, you can go play the piano for the class. And so for a semester, that is what he did. And he loved it. And me and him actually got to be a little bit friends, and not, we don't have any contact now, but during the class, he appreciated me. I appreciated him. I gave him a way to complete the class that was a little bit out of the ordinary. But the class loved it. I loved it. If you play an instrument, I will sit and listen to you play for hours. And so it was fun. And so these are just a few more stories that are from my teaching days. Like I said, I do miss it. I loved doing it. So if you like this, let me know, and I'll tell you more. So until next time.